welcome back to this week's edition of the Rock and Roll Bros podcast. This week we have musician Brandon Curtis of Secret Machines. He's here to promote the reissue of the Dreaming of Dreaming EP, as well as the Day 21 EP, which is the Day 21 EP out now? Or on the 15th.
I think it's out in a couple of days. Yeah.
Yeah, 15th, correct. Yeah, it just hit my memory. Because I was listening to the single of Day 21, but I didn't realize that it. Anyways, so the Day 21 was kind of leftover material from the last album, or was this something else?
Well, not really leftover as much as we started it as we were finishing the Awaken the Brain Chamber. So it was kind of it just kind of was a little out of sync with some of the other material. And so one of the songs on the EP is actually from the Awaken the Brain Chamber sessions, but the first and last song, Day 21, and New Ordinance are songs that we just began as we were mixing the Awaken the Brain Chamber.
Gotcha. Yeah, the Day 21 song is really cool, and the last album, I was re-listening to it today, and it has the spirit of what you guys did in the 2000s, but it's a little more, I guess the best word would be refined in a certain sense. It's a little bit, for me, it was just a little bit more, tighter, a little more song focused. And I love the stuff from the 2000s. Don't get me wrong. I just say
Thank you.
Took a lot of time off in between, and Josh went off to do some things, and you did some other things. You were touring with Interpol. I read, which I didn't know about before. But it just took a while for you guys to you and Josh to get back together. What was the actual moment like when you guys said, "Hey, let's try to do this again"?
Well, thank you for all that. That's I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, so many things. Let's see. The moment that we kind of decided to get back together was, Josh lives in LA, I live in Vermont, so we're not really in our day-to-day lives together, and we kind of hadn't been, some certain personal things that kind of happened. Mm-hmm. Benjamin's death, Josh had some things that some personal issues with his family, and so just kind of life got in the way a little bit too, as well as the distance. And I'd been kind of working on some songs with some musicians in New York that I was using the name Cosmicide, and we were doing a series of shows at Pianos. I think it was Pianos. It was someplace in Lower East Side, in Josh was going to be in town, and I was just like, "Hey, do you want to do a Secret Machine song? Come on stage and play, and we'll just try it." And so he came up. We did Alone, Jealous, and Stoned, and it was great. It was just fun. It just felt like the first note was kind of like, I felt it, you know what I mean? It was just like one of those, it's hard to describe. But afterwards we hung out and we just sort of stayed in contact. Maybe it was a few months later, I was in LA and we were having dinner, and he and I were talking, and it just kind of, we broached the subject. It's like, what if this was a Secret Machines project? And it was like it's kind of like, we never broke up. We never said, mm-hmm, we're done. But when so much time has passed and so many things have happened, it's kind of like, it takes a minute to kind of check in and see where each other is at, in a weird way, where you're at spiritually, emotionally. And we kind of came together and we were like, let's give it a shot. Let's try it. So we booked a studio in LA, reworked the songs that I had been kind of working on, brought them to kind of like a new place with his contribution. And that was Awaken the Brain Chamber. And then as we were having it mixed Claudius Mittendorfer, who engineered the Now Here's Nowhere sessions for Rich Costi, the mixing for the Now Here's Nowhere sessions for Rich Costi, mixed the Wake in the Brain Chamber. We're continuing to work on stuff. Day 21 and like I said, the New Ordinance song came out, and like we sent those to Claudius, and it just kind of like slowly kind of completing this work, I guess, you know, with no real idea what the end goal would be. Obviously, we're not affiliated with any labels. We're not affiliated with really any kind of external structure that we had been in the past. Right. So it was very liberating in a way. It was just us making decisions in a way. Then the pandemic happened, and we were just talking. We're just like, let's just put this record out. You know, what the heck? Let's just do it. And yeah, that's really the kind of like the short and sweet version, you know, and and yeah, so that's what we did. And gosh, it's been a lot of fun. Just he and I don't know, I've known him, shoot, I think I met him in like 1996 or something like that. So it's like we go way back. Yeah. And yeah, so it's like it was just a, you know, one of those things where kind of fell in place, and our history and the kind of like just the connection was still there, you know. Yeah. And yeah, and so I if I can, I wanted to address a couple of things you mentioned about the kind of the vibe or the tone of Awake in the Brain Chamber.
Sure.
It's funny because like we're also in the process of re-releasing the self-titled record that we did in 2008. That's going to be later this fall, and then we have another record that we started around 2009, 2010 called The Moth and the Lizard and the Secret Machines that we shelved in 2010. And that's finished now. We're releasing that later this year too. Wow. So the Awake in the Brain Chamber sessions, the songs kind of were in a weird way a reaction or like to this record that no one else has heard yet, which is kind of like very sprawling and wild and a lot of like just like very like out there. And so I think the kind of, you're talking about the conciseness or maybe the pithiness of these songs versus some of our previous stuff. It's definitely like a reaction to this other record that everyone will hear later this year, hopefully. Gotcha.
Yeah, because it's you know, it's nice to see a record too. The other thing about Awake in the Brain Chamber is that it's 8 songs. You know, it's not 22 or, you know, because now you can just do infinite amount of songs. It went from being you only had a certain amount of you know, space on a record or a cassette, then you had like an hour and 20 on a CD. So then things started and then like now with digital, it's like you could just release it. You can release like 40 songs at a time and it doesn't matter, you know. You can release
absolutely
what we're working on, and you know, you can still call it an album. But in my old age, you know, I'm 51 head, you know, it's like 8 songs. That's great. You know, that's like back to the 80s stuff, you know, just
totally. I mean, it's an interesting point because it's like you think about it, the same is true in all media really. And it's like, but yet I think we all gravitate to movies that are about 80, 87, 90 minutes, television shows that either 60 or 30. I mean, there's these formats that for better or worse are just kind of like work, I guess, you know what I mean? And to me, like an album longer than 60 minutes is a challenge because I mean, it had to be a pretty great album to sit through and not skip tracks or to cut it, you know what I mean? And so for me, like 35, 40 minutes, it's kind of like the sweet spot for me for an album. You know what I mean? If I'm just going to check out, especially somebody that I don't have like if I'm just going to listen to it, like if I'm doing other stuff, you know, let it play. We'll just kind of like, but if you're going to sit and pay attention to a record, I think that's about the right amount of time.
Yeah. It's amazing how much just thinking back to when I was a kid and having a Walkman, and I took 2 buses to go to my job at a movie theater in a mall far away from me, and I would just bring like 4 or 5 cassettes with me because it was that long. I'd bring a book, and you know, we just used to kind of absorb media so differently. It was structured, which I like a lot of the unstructuredness of modern times in terms of media, but there's also something to be said about focusing in and delivering a focused, sharp, completely, you know, not minimalized, but just a shortened product just to maximize potential from, you know, listeners' ears or eyes or whatever. It's just sometimes, you know, more is just more.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and yet I simultaneously live on both sides of that, because it's like
Right.
I don't ever want to tell somebody to like, don't release this, don't do that, don't put this, limit yourself,
Right.
whatever. But I do think there's like maybe conceptually the idea, like the, you know, you might call it like the shotgun approach. I'm going to put 25 songs on here and you're going to like one of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
somebody's going to like, maybe no one's going to like all 25, but somebody over here likes 14, somebody over here likes 6. You know what I mean? To kind of
Right.
like, and to me that's an approach. I don't know if I share it or necessarily choose to do that, but I it's definitely a weird thing to kind of another thing is like self-editing. Like when you're putting songs on, you're like,
Right.
it becomes, especially when you've worked on something for so long, it's like, are you gonna take it off? Are you gonna like, are you really not gonna, after how much of your heart and soul poured into this thing, it's like it's not gonna make it. That's a tough call personally, I think, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think back to you know, I think back to a band like Concrete Blonde, who I really loved as a teenager, and they came out with a whole album of like discarded things or live, like, you know, the Who idea, odds and sods, you know, and one of
Yeah.
my favorite songs by Concrete Blonde is on a soundtrack which doesn't appear pretty much. I think it appears on the Bloodletting, you know, like remastered edition, but you know, there's a song for Point Break, you know, they had uh,
Yeah.
on that soundtrack that I loved, you know, and now it's available, you know, digitally. But that was back then when that was the only place you could find it. If you bought the Point Break soundtrack, the great movie with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves,
Totally. Yeah.
that was the only way you would hear that song. So it's like, you know, I always love the approach of like bands coming out with something that, you know, showed a lot of the stuff they worked on that just didn't quite maybe fit with, you know, the album they did it under, you know, too.
Oh man, I'm right there with you. Like I'm a completist. Like there are moments where like when I was really just really digging into the Beatles and all of their whatever, you know, extra stuff, and like I wanted the Glenn Johns Get Out. I wanted the demos for the White Album. I wanted the mono Sergeant Pepper before it was available. You know what I mean? I wanted all the extra
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and it's like because I was like obsessed, and it was more like a, yeah, it was an obsession, you know, more than
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
totally.
Music can, all art can become an obsession. You know, music
Absolutely.
used to especially be that way with you know, for me. But and now it's just like we're at a point where just everything is available, and it's kind of awesome in its own way. But it's also like I don't find myself focusing in on newer stuff a lot of the times. Even but sometimes there are artists that put out albums and I don't even realize they put them out. Like I look and they put that out in 2019. I wasn't even aware they put out an album. You know, there's that kind of loss of focus. Even though I'm trying to pay attention, somehow stuff just slips through, and I don't know how that is or why that is.
It's a real problem, and I think conceptually, I think it's one of the reasons, like in the, you know, over the last 10 years or so, that's been challenging to kind of get back into putting out music, because it's like music as a commercial endeavor is very challenging. It's like it's hard to like put something out with the expectation or idea that you're going to have any kind of commercial relevance, or even like any kind of finding an audience or a new audience. You know what I mean? It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
very challenging. So in a weird way, it kind of puts a damper on like the enthusiasm for making new music, because there's so much noise out there, and especially if you're not
Yeah,
paying attention. It's like if you look in specific genres, you can really dial in and say like, oh, it's not noise, it's amazing stuff. There's so much amazing stuff, but because there's so much of it, it kind of becomes like an element of like just noise and static. And so it's like,
yeah,
why would you want to contribute more to that? Why would you want to put more noise into an already noisy world? And I think that's something that like Josh and I talked about recently, which is like we like this, we like making stuff, and we like the process, we like finishing things, and then it's just, you show it off, and it's like, you know, put it out there, and it's like with the expectation is over. The expectation was enjoying the kind of the, I don't know, it's so cheesy, so enjoying the journey.
you know, I
You know what I mean?
get
It's
you.
like but it's like and I feel like that's a real gift in a weird way to find that perspective, and I think it just has allowed us to go like, hell yeah, let's make new music, and because it's not about like you know any kind of end goal or success failure. It's like let's just enjoy creating.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know you got all this stuff coming. You got the EPs, you got the re-release of the one album, and the completion and publication of the Lost album. Are you guys planning on doing any touring behind any of the stuff?
I think I would like to. I think we don't we don't have any plans.
Right.
Nothing's planned, nothing's booked. We don't have we haven't put even one little bit of effort or idea into like exploring that, just because that's a whole other like mountain to climb in a weird way in this day and age, especially because I still work with Interpol, and touring with them. It's like even a band as successful as Interpol, the challenges of touring in the pandemic. Like I got COVID on the last run that we did when we played Primavera, and I got COVID.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it sucks. And it's like, if for a band like Secret Machines, if we were gonna do something like that or plan or something like that, it'd be an incredible investment in time and money. And I don't know if we could sustain a cancellation. I don't know if we could sustain you know what I mean? It's like that would be a tough thing to kind of recover from.
Gotcha.
From that point of view. Not to say we wouldn't do it. I definitely love. I mean, I love playing. I love performing. I love being a part of like the live audience experience. But it doesn't seem like it's on the near future, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's great that you've got like the gig with Interpol, because I didn't realize it was still going on. Because to have a gig like that with a band that they weren't crazy huge, but they definitely got an audience. So as a musician, being able to work, is a good thing. Is it all you do? Is terms of is just music now? You don't have a day job or anything?
Yeah, the Interpol has been my day job. I work on some other records. I produce and mix occasionally if I, kind of vibe with the project. But yeah, Interpol has been it. I mean, and then, that said, those last couple of years, there's not been a lot of that going on. So it's
I get that. I get that. Yeah.
So yeah, this tour started in April, and it's kind of going on and off for the next year or so. So it's nice. It's nice to be back out there. COVID aside, it's like being able to participate in live music, and dude, you said it, like, or being a working musician is like that's all I ever really wanted as a kid.
Yeah.
It's just like, I didn't want to, my first idea was like, I didn't want to make a band or start a band or whatever. I just wanted to be in a band. And so it's like, it kind of touches that little childhood dream that's still ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I apologize because I sadly, Interpol is one of those bands that I haven't been keeping up with as much, obviously, because I didn't know that you were still touring with them. But do you work on the albums as well?
I did on this one, the newest one they did in the UK during the pandemic, and it's just the three of them. Most of the the previous two I did record keyboards on. I think some other people did some keyboards on some other songs too. Yeah, I worked with them a little bit in the studio, but primarily it's been as a live performance.
Gotcha. For touring. Gotcha. Well, that's how did you get to know those guys? I mean, if I just out of curiosity.
I met them. We played together the first time in 2002, I think, at a place in the Lower East Side called Mercury Lounge in New York.
Okay.
And I remember being so annoyed because they had a little bit of they were there before Secret Machines were, and they had a following and something like that. And so basically back in the day, the sweet spot was to be third, and then the fourth band would be like not quite as you know what I mean? It's like early night, and then like there's a band that played after. So anyway, they're a bigger band ostensibly, obviously, and we played after them anyway, and I was super annoyed by it. But anyway, we hit it off, and it kind of stayed close, and just not close, but like we're colleagues, lived in the same city, played together. On their Antics tour, Secret Machine supported them. I guess that's 2004, maybe 2005, something around
That's
there.
about right.
Yeah, and we did US, and we did what else did we do? We did Europe, a little bit of Europe with them. And yeah, and so in 2010, I think when Carlos left Interpol, I think the deal was that he was kind of the guy who looked after the keywords for the most part. Maybe he wrote the parts. I don't really know exactly what their personal, the dynamic, creative dynamic previously was. But I think when Carlos left, they needed a bass player and someone to kind of look after the keyboard parts. And Paul called me and asked me if I was interested, and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. You know what I mean? And then 12 years later, I'm still doing it.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. Yeah,
No, it's been
you're
fun.
talking about playing with them at Mercury Lounge. I saw them right when, right before the album, their first album played, came out. I saw them at, I don't know if you've ever played it in Chicago, the Empty Bottle.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, looking back, it's like, when you've seen certain bands in very small, like I got to see Adele at a tiny theater, tiny room actually in Chicago. This is before she hit big, obviously, and the record label was pushing everybody to go see Adele. It's like, and I was already into this, her first single, so I was like, oh, this is cool. And it's like this, to know that I saw Adele in this tiny room, and now she plays mega stadiums when she tours. It's kind of insane.
It's really insane. Yeah, I mean, I have similar experiences with a few bands. Like I saw the Strokes in that same Mercury Lounge. We came up around the same time as like Yeah Yeahs and Interpol and the Rapture, and like we saw all. I mean, like I remember seeing, I don't know, like Lightning Bolt in that Brownies in a place that's like a 200 capacity place with they're still the same setup. I mean, it's just like, it's one of those things, I guess, when you're in the right place at the right time, you get lucky, But yeah, it's weird. And then they become this kind of iconic thing, or whatever.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, it's weird talking about like all these bands from that time. That, in my head, and I'm not saying that there aren't good rock bands now. I'm not saying that. I feel out of touch. But in my head, as far as rock being a thing, like a thing where there was push behind it and all that era was, for me, like kind of like the last gasp of that big rock push, because there was all that hype around the White Stripes, the Strokes, Interpol, you guys, the whole bit, and it's like, and now rock exists. I'm not saying rock is dead. It's not. I don't think music in general, unless it's like top 10, honestly, if it's not top 10, pretty much nobody gets any real hype anymore, which is weird. And it seems like the top 10 has been the same songs the past 25 years, in my opinion. But
it's tough because I think again, you could call it's easy to kind of look at the current state of music and say it's just a bunch of noise. But like, I really think the way it's kind of atomized, or it's bifurcated into this so many subgenres, and like between, it's like, I mean, there's incredible, I don't know, I find new music through Twitter or whatever, through Quietus or whatever, this and that, kind of like things come across and it's like, I'm always just like, holy crap, this is incredible, this is amazing, you know what I mean? And I don't know, it's like I think where I kind of sympathize or feel that is that that's the end of it. I don't get on the path or on the train or on the journey with these bands that I discover, because there's so much of it. There's always like another thing to listen to or whatever. And I think maybe back in the day, if you found a band like something that spoke to you or whatever, I don't know. I remember hearing Dinosaur Jr. for the first time in like 1990, whatever, 3 or something like that, and just going like, I'm on this ride, you know what I mean? It's like and then, or Sonic Youth or something like that, or something where you just kind of, and this speaks to our age, I guess, maybe, I'm 50, so it's like the similar kind of time and place. And it's like, I became or Flaming Lips even more so, because I grew up in Oklahoma. It's like this band represented hometown. Like this was
Right.
my thing, you know what I mean? And it's like I'm listening to every single thing, I'm following it. And I don't know if that's a product of age or if it's a
Well,
product of
I think it goes back again to that focus thing where you're like everything was funneled through. There was stuff on the outskirts, sure. Lord knows bands like Superchunk or whatever,
oh yeah.
that existed on the outskirts, but there was a certain funneling through the system, and there was like I said, a focus. There's a focus still now, but it's gotten the focus by labels and stuff has gotten so much more narrower.
Mm.
That's why people think music sucks now, because you're only getting hit over the head with the same 10 or so artists over and over and over and over again. It's like maybe one sneaks through and another one pulls out. But it's like it doesn't seem like it changes much as it used to. Like
I find that
Nirvana to have exploded back when they did could never happen. This way. That way again.
mm. I mean, yes, I think it's 100% true. I also find it fascinating to think about what we're really talking about is like the industry and the kind
Right.
of the reason why certain bands were able to be kind of presented and was like the amount of money that got spent for servicing radio, servicing press, doing this and that, you know what I mean? It's like the reason why Nirvana went from Sub Pop to David Geffen or whatever is because that was the money, that was the finances, that was the thing that allowed that thing to happen. You know what I mean? It's like I remember people talking to people in Seattle and they're like I'm like fascinated. I'm like, what was it like to see Nirvana? Oh my God. And they're like, they were just a good band. You know what I mean? It was like a
Right.
good local band or whatever. And then obviously they're iconic and I love them. And I was swept along like everybody else. But it's like, I think of a product of that is the fact that it was in a machine, an enormously funded, huge machine that made that possible. You know what I mean? That made it to be like working every radio station, working every, I mean, the same could be said for Radiohead or whatever. I don't know that Radiohead would be Radiohead if they were a product of their time and place. You know what I mean? They had their hit, and then they got the latitude to kind of explore, but they were funded, and they were not. This is not a criticism of their talent or their creativity, because they're incredible. But the fact that they were able to bring that kind of like outsider music, or what at that time was, dipping their toes in the avant-garde. You know what I mean? That I don't know. It's like that. I don't know if that happens again. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then I hear about things like Doja Cat and how she grew up on or has some kind of connection to Alice Coltrane, or you know what I mean? Or like Harry Styles referencing kind of obscure Japanese artists. You know what I mean? And like, so it's like maybe the outsider music or the avant-garde is so synthesized and integrated into pop that maybe it's just out there and we don't notice it anymore. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I think now it's like everybody has the opportunity to play. If they're not going to be on a major label, then they can sit there and they can play whatever style of music they want and be free artistically. Whereas back then, like you're talking about Radiohead, they started out as a pub band. They played rock songs. I think they had modest expectations, but once they became a bigger band, they started pushing their envelope and opening their sound up more, because they were allowed that freedom because they were successful. And they just kept, even though OK Computer maybe wasn't as successful as some of their other stuff at the time, it did garner them extremely big, raves critically, and it allowed them to keep exploring. And
for sure,
but I just think, I sit there and I think about somebody like David Bowie, who's putting out 2 albums a year, and you have some experience with Mr. Bowie too. I did read that great New York Times interview from a couple of years ago, where you're talking about, just the scary thing about meeting your heroes and stuff, because he was interviewing you.
Holy crap, that was, I mean, we met him first. We were playing I think it was our New York record release party for Now Here's Nowhere. We're playing, I think it was, at the time it was called Irving Plaza. I'm not sure what they call it now. It might be
Yeah.
something else at Irving Plaza.
Bud
And
Light
we're,
Plaza.
is that,
I don't know.
I don't even know if you're joking. It's like, it could be very well be.
It could very well be, yeah. I mean, the Chicago White Sox played a place called Guaranteed Rate Field, which is the most boring. I mean, it's better than American Cellular, which is what it was before, which doesn't. I don't even think exists anymore. But company in baseball, just I don't know. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. But anyways, continue.
I agree. Yeah. So we're 10 minutes, 5 minutes, a couple minutes before going on, and our tour manager says like, someone would like to come back and say hi, and we're like, are you fucking crazy? It's like, it's David Bowie, and we're like, yes, come on back. And so he comes back, he's got like a puffy jacket on, super incognito, you know, like, and it's just like, holy fucking shit. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed.
No,
pardon me. Yeah,
let it fly.
I was feeling it, you know what I mean? I felt humbled, and he was just charming, and like shook our hands and was funny. I don't even remember what it was just like I was in the, it's like a dream, you know. It's like
I've had that experience sometimes. Yeah. You meet somebody famous. It's like you feel like you just met the hottest girl in the world.
I mean, yeah, exactly. And to me, like,
or whatever.
I grew Bowie was like my playbook or whatever. It's just like, you know, like hearing music. Like, I think I would always heard the word David Bowie. You know what I mean? I knew Space Oddity, some of the hits, kind of. It's like whatever. And then I heard Low, and I was just like, you know what I mean? And then it's like that led to Brian Eno and Roxy Music, and it's just like, and then I'm listening to Noi, and then I'm listening to Can, and then I reacquaint myself with Kraftwerk, and then it's like it's just like this opened up, and it's Bowie. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That was my doorway, and then it's just like, and he kept doing that. You know what I mean? Like, throughout my life, it was just like he was like a touchstone. It's just like there are different eras I would like connect with. Oh, Young Americans, are you kidding me? It's like, oh, it's like, then, you know, station to station, whatever, I can listen, you know. And so he's in this room, and you're just like, it was fascinating, and my feelings about it haven't changed. I'm still starstruck in you know, in my mind.
Yeah.
So he came to a couple other shows. He would just come. He would just show up and come back and say hi, and I'd just be like, hey, what's up? And he's like, I have this is pre-podcast. I don't know if they existed. I don't know if they called them that. He had on his website, he had a thing where he would do interviews with people. He's like, I want to interview you guys. Come, I'm going to send you an address, whatever. So he sends this address. It's a studio. We go up there. It's Philip Glass's recording studio. It's Looking Glass Studios. Cool. And we're like, oh, no big deal. Yeah. So we go into Philip Glass's studio. We're in the control room, and he's just a guy making tea, talking about stuff, setting up a microphone. You know what I mean? It's like he's got an engineer helping, but it's just like he's doing this. You know what I mean? We're doing this, and it was just like, he's so. I think the thing that kind of I'm left with in my memory is that he was able to just like put you at ease. I mean, I'm in the presence of, like, as far as I'm concerned, the Messiah. You know what I mean? Jesus Christ, my spiritual leader, whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I get you. I totally get it.
And he's just, you can feel cool, comfortable, and he's just like a charming dude. And, you know, we met him one other time after that. We played the Skyline, when the Skyline Park was being built in New York. He did a fundraiser, and he had a series of shows, and he booked us to play, and he came back stage that time, and like, he's like, I'm probably not going to stay for the whole show, but I just wanted to say hi and thank you for coming. We're like, oh man, it's amazing. That is the time I remember to take a picture.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's my photograph. I have it, and I'm just like, oh, thank fucking God.
That's awesome.
That. But then we're after the show, we're coming back, and he comes back after the show. He's like, I couldn't leave. And it's just like,
yeah.
I mean, that's it. To me, like,
that's insane. That's insanely awesome. That's like, I can't imagine. That's probably going to be one of the most gratifying, you know, things ever. It's like having fans is one thing, but having somebody that you loved yourself be a fan. Now, obviously, he was a fan. You know, he saw you guys perform at least a half a dozen times, it seems. So.
Yeah, and it's like you know, I'm not like, there's so many like sentimental components of it, but it was just like, it just meant so much. And then you just don't realize how much time is like left for people or whatever, and like what he was going through in that time, you know what I mean? Because it's like, what is he, 6 years away, 5 years away from his death. And it's just like, I remember like when my brother was going through chemotherapy is when Black Star came out, and it was just like, it just like, it was like his, again, like his contribution was like the soundtrack, you know what I mean? It just like, it was like this iconic, identifiable moment. And and like, I remember being at a restaurant with my brother post a chemo session, and like they're playing Black Star on the overhead, and it was just like, yeah, it just feels like, you know, he's a part of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know, I don't want to dwell on it. I lost a brother myself at a young age,
I'm
and
so sorry.
I know, and same for you. Benjamin, I loved him in the band. I loved him in school, Seven Bells, and it really affected me when I heard he passed. And you know, my sympathies to all of you guys and your family.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy talking about the Interpol connection too. Is like, we were on tour with Secret Machines. Were on tour with Interpol. The opening band was On Your Library, which is Ali and Claudia DeHeza, who ended up being, that's where Benjamin met Ali.
Yeah,
And they kind of hooked up, and it's like, that's the starting point for School of Seven Bells right there. You know what I mean? It's just like so many weird like synchronicities.
yeah. No, I School of Seven Bells was a band I truly adored, and
Me too.
I loved how he went and he did something, you know, completely different in a lot of ways. I mean, I think
Sure.
I think you could, you know, there's a through line, you know, but I think in terms, you know, you guys were Secret Machines is kind of rock, you know, forward pulsating, and then School of Seven Bells is this more ethereal, you know, synth kind of thing, and you know, for somebody to be in two major bands like that, I think is just amazing.
That's stunning. He's like when we'd finished 10 Silver Drops. We were like on tour, we're doing some shows, and Benjamin came to me and he was like, I think I can't do both bands, because I knew he had been working with Ali already. They've been writing,
Right.
And it's like, I was heartbroken and angry and like, you know, feeling betrayed in the moment and all that stuff. But ultimately that passed pretty quick, because it's just like, dude, you have to just you have to follow your passion. And I kind of, in a weird way, like his willingness to kind of make the leap to stop being in this band to start a new band is just like, that's just incredible, like dedication and just confidence. And
Exactly.
you know what I mean? It's like really amazing. Yeah.
No, I think it does, when somebody makes that decision, it's kind of amazing, because like, you know, right at that moment, you guys were still a thing. You know, you guys could have kept going and been Secret Machines, and that's the easy, you know, a route, you know, and instead making that decision to go left and try something new is gotta be difficult, but you know, rewarding if it works out in the way it did here. So yeah.
I mean, I think it speaks to his integrity and his kind of authenticity as an artist, as a creative person, to make that choice. Because it could have been, he could have had one as a side project, or, you know what I mean, whatever, you know, he could have done that, but that's just wasn't how he worked. He was an all or nothing in a weird way, you know what I mean? Like, he was very, I mean, shoot, just like all consumed, you know, like if you went to visit, when I would go to his apartment, he'd be on his laptop making music. If we were on tour together and it was after a show, he would be on his laptop making, he was just like that. He was just like, and yeah, I just have you know, apart from everything else, my brother, whatever, it's like, I have a huge amount of respect for him as an artist.
Yeah. I also think it's amazing. You got to spend all that time working together and being, you know, being close with each other. It's not everybody has, you know, that same, you know, luck is, you know, you're stuck together as kids for the most part. But then everybody at some point goes off and does their own thing for the most, you know, and it may take you to another state, whatever, but you guys kind of, you know, kept together as playing together. And I think that's got to be, you know, really heartening to think back on. And it's very,
I feel super lucky. Thing. I feel super lucky and super privileged, you know, and you know, it's also like I feel a huge absence. Like he was my
Oh yeah.
main collaborator for decades, and my, you know, my sound, like we were, I did, it's like one of those things like you, and you know this, like how much you rely on somebody when you don't notice it till, you know, do you just feel the absence, or you feel the void, or like the, yeah, it becomes like a whole, like their presence becomes like a, almost you feel how big their presence was, I guess is what I'm trying to say, you know?
No, it's something that I don't think people that haven't lost, you know, there's different levels of loss. What my mother went through losing my brother at a young age, is probably more. I won't say even more is worse than mine or anything like. But I think it's a strong. There's a difference when your child
Oh
leaves.
yeah.
There's that there's that connection as a sibling. That's something that most people don't know unless they've been through it. That it's yeah. I'm sorry. I'm starting to think about my brother now, and he still comes to me in dreams occasionally, and
Ah,
I get to see that he's for whatever's out there, above, beyond whatever. Him coming to visit me is a nice thing.
hell yeah, it is. It's amazing. And it's like, I feel like, well, first of all, I think it's important. I take every opportunity I can to speak about Benjamin. And I mean, I appreciate you sharing about your brother. It's like, it's just like, we should honor their memory and think about it. And like, I think it's important to kind of like publicly talk about it, because
Yeah.
it's like, it's a way of like respecting their, you know, our relationship, your relationship, you know? And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I think it's important. I don't know.
I get
I was
you.
gonna say something else, but I forgot.
No, I get you. And then there's, it's a lot of them. A lot of, it doesn't matter how many years ago. But for me, my brother left us in 1991. I mean, it never seems to get, it gets easier, but it doesn't. I don't.
Absolutely. I think that's the thing that you kind of say, like people say you never get over it, and it's hard to convey that in language, because it's true, you never get over it. But it's like learning to live, I would imagine learning to live with a disability or an absence or something that you had and that you haven't. It's like it doesn't change the difficulty or the challenge of like what you're going through, but you kind of you get workarounds. You get like, I have like, I mean, I was like kind of feeling tears about 5 minutes ago, 10 years ago, or however many years, whatever, a few years ago, I would have needed a month to recover from that. It's like you kind of
Yeah,
get a little resilient. I can kind of feel those emotions and pull back a little bit. It does,
I
but
think,
it's
and
like,
I think talking about it helps.
yes, yes.
You couldn't. I mean, I think about my mother, and like she still has her bad days.
Oh, sure.
And for her, with my brother, he was born with Down syndrome. And he was born at a time where those kind of things for disabled people were just at the start of being around, and she fought for everything for him to be as productive as possible, and I think that she put all her energy that she could when she wasn't working. Trust me, this woman worked 3 jobs. At one point, she went back to school, and she put all of her other energy into my brother, and that thinking about her loss is just sometimes I couldn't imagine, putting, I don't know, I'm kind of
No,
bad.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's, I mean, I don't know. I don't have kids, but I can't imagine the feeling of losing a child, and especially somebody who I mean, you know, you're someone who's vulnerable, somebody who needs you, somebody who you're fighting for. What was his
Mm.
name?
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey. Hmm. I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say that when you talking about Jeffrey visiting you in dreams, I've never had that. I've never had a dream with
Really?
Benjamin, and my wife has. People that I know tell me about it all the time, and they've
Really?
had these experiences, and I'm so happy for them. It's like, because I love that, but I've never had the dream where I've been to go like, "Are you okay?" or like, "What's going on?" or you know what I mean? That kind of like those kinds of interactive dreams or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. You know what I mean? But it's like,
I hope it does, because that I tell you, there was one I still remember. I don't remember much about the dream, but I remember he hugged me, and I remember that I woke up and I still felt it. You know what I mean?
yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, most
beautiful.
When he visits me, for some reason we're outside of a supermarket. And there's shopping carts all over the place, and I don't know what the hell that means, but it's not like we both went grocery shopping all the time.
It's like you could think of the more boring thing to do.
No, it's just like at least 3 or 4 dreams have been outside of a supermarket. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I'm sure somebody has an idea, but I think that's funny.
It's beautiful.
Well, let me wrap up on a more a lighter note, I suppose. So if you got the EPs coming on the 15th.
That's right.
God, I forgot the titles. The 2 albums.
The self-titled Secret Machines is the self-titled record that we originally released in 2008. I think we're announcing that. I don't know when this comes out, but it will have been announced probably when this comes out. But I think we're announcing it in the next week or so. I don't know exactly.
Okay, yeah, that'll have come out before this.
Mm-hmm. And then we're officially announcing the Moth, the Lizard, and the Secret Machines shortly after that, and that's going to come later. And I think we're going to try and do some vinyls of both of those other 2 records, that's a whole other mess of a conversation, the vinyl world right now. Yeah.
No, I hear you. Involves the whole deal with the label and all that stuff. Yeah, I was talking to Tanya Donnelly recently, and she was saying that she's close to having the Belly albums back from Elektra, or whatever the hell Elektra is now, or what. I think she was on Elektra. It was either that or GC, I forget. But yeah, she's close to getting all her albums back. So we were talking about Spotify, and she's been a big anti-Spotify person for a while, and stuff like that. But that's another argument to have. What do you have anything else going on the rest of your year besides Secret Machine stuff?
Secret Machines, like releases?
Well, or anything like tour, like is Interpol doing more dates, things like that?
Yes, their record comes out. Shoot, I think it comes out this month. I'm not sure if it comes out maybe it's this weekend. I don't know.
Okay.
Shoot, it might come out the same day as our EP. That's weird. I just realizing that. So I'm doing Interpol stuff for the rest of this record cycle, which will probably take us through 23. I haven't seen all the dates, but it looks like there's stuff into next year. And then Josh and I are kind of like working on figuring out a way to write together, being however many thousands of miles apart.
What do you do? Do you start with something and you send it to him, and he lays over something, and then you kind of back and forth it?
That's the idea. We haven't been able to get it. Maybe it's just because the material hasn't clicked yet, but we haven't been able to successfully do that. He sent me some things, and then I sent him some things, and it's just like it hasn't happened yet, but we're not giving up on it.
Okay, well, no, don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah,
Brandon, I really appreciate it. We took a little bit longer than I had scheduled today, and I apologize if I'm taking you away from anything. But it was a really it was a very open and amazing conversation.
I appreciate it.
I really thank you very much for being on here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, you have a great rest of your day. Good luck with the rest of your year.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.